Hi all, welcome to the benchmarking video. This system based on the Intel i5-6500 CPU and the GTX 1060 6GB graphics card. So straight into it, I've run a few of the graphical benchmarks and taken a reading without Bandicam recording and with Bandicam recording, so you can see what the expected performance hit will be taken in my videos when I start recording. So the Heaven benchmark without Bandicam recording, a score of 5782. With Bandicam recording, a score of 5439. On to Valley without Bandicam recording, 4861, and with Bandicam recording, a score of 4440. I also ran the more comprehensive Firestrike benchmark, which is part of 3D Mark, and without Bandicam recording we did a score of 10071, and with Bandicam recording we're going to score of 9442. What that translates to is a performance hit in Heaven of 6.5%, Valley 9.5%, Firestrike 6.5%. So I suppose on average the performance downshift due to the Bandicam recording is roughly on all those three 7.5%. So expect a similar figure when I tell you the gaming performance results. So let's load up a few games and see what performance we can get out of this system. So up first is Doom Eternal. Now looking at the graphical settings, I've taken all the defaults and the majority are on high, with a couple, actually there's one on ultra, so there's plenty of room for adjusting any of those settings should you wish to play this on a monitor that can display more than 60 frames per second, which this monitor can't, so it's a bang on 60 frames per second. The top right, VRAM is well within the limits of this card, which is 6GB. So getting into the action doesn't really deviate too much from that 60 frames per second I told you about. A lot of characters moving on the screen, and this is a very well optimized game anyway, so I'm not surprised that this machine is doing very well on this. If you've not played the previous game in this, Doom from 2016, I highly recommend it. I've not really played Doom Eternal, but it's another game of high quality if you like these sort of games. Right, so that's Doom Eternal. So onto Apex Legends, and with all the quality settings set to high, maximum resolution, and a few characters moving on the screen, pretty steady 60 frames per second, which is not unsurprising really. So just see if I can go outside and get a firefight going. Just revive this player. So just go outside. Yeah, it's pretty steady at 60. Right, so that's Apex Legends. On to Fortnite. Now I've got all the graphical settings set to epic, and we're getting a relatively stable 60 frames per second with not too many characters going on the screen. You might want to check out the VSync, because I did notice slight screen tearing when I move the screen up and down, so this will need a bit of tweaking. If you find the frame rate does stutter, I mean, it's not doing it at the moment, then maybe set some of those graphical settings to high, because on this size monitor you probably won't notice much difference between the epic setting and high setting. I did notice occasionally just then there's one or two stutters, so yeah, maybe experiment a little. Okay, so that's Fortnite. Onto Shadow of the Tomb Raider now, which is the latest PC game in the series. Now I've set the texture quality to ultra, and a lot of the other settings are set to normal, and if there's an on-off flag I've set those to on, except for that one which is screen space contact shadows, so I'll just set that to high. And what I'll do now is I'll run the game's benchmark for those settings, and I'll report back on the results at the end. Right, so the in-game benchmark is finished, and we get an average frame rate of 52, which is good enough. If you want the magical 60, then I'm sure some of those settings can be adjusted accordingly, but like I've said before, one example is that texture quality which is set to ultra, and dropping that down to the next setting you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Right, so that's Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So on to FIFA 2018, and with all the settings set to maximum resolution, we're getting a pretty rock solid 60 frames per second, which is what I expected on this sort of game. Just a note is I've actually locked that frame rate to 60, which if you start getting stutters, which probably won't on this machine, but if you start getting stutters, then try locking the frame rate say to 30 or 60, which might help stop those intermittent stutters should you encounter them. And I'm sure this machine won't have problems playing the more recent FIFA games or any other football games in other series. So FIFA 2018. On to probably the most demanding game in those that I'm going to benchmark, and that's Cyberpunk, and I've set the graphics preset to high. There are a lot of other settings which can be adjusted to your liking to get a good balance between performance and quality, and I've also selected the maximum resolution. So what I'll do is I'll just start the game briefly in the opening section, and just to show you a bit of the performance. Right, so in this opening scenario I'm outside, and with not too much going on, it's mid 30 frames per second, which once we get into a built up area, I'm sure that frame rate's just going to go down too much. So what I'll do is I'll just pause the recording and put the preset to medium, just see what we get. So I've put the graphical settings to medium, I haven't changed any of the others, and we're getting mid 40s. So you may want to revisit those settings once you get into a more built up area with more characters moving on the screen. Right, so that's Cyberpunk. On to Forza Horizon 4. Now I've had this problem before. For some reason Bandicam causes the game to stall on startup, so I'm recording this on an external camera, which you're probably used to seeing in my videos. So I've taken the high preset, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run the game's benchmark mode. So what I'll do is I'll let that run and then report back with the results. So looking at the results, which you probably can't see in this video, the performance summary, target 60 frames per second, which this monitor is limited to, and achieved bang on 60 frames per second. And looking at the video memory, well within the limit of 6 gig, and same for the system memory, so maximum resolution as well. You probably get away with nudging up the settings even further, because I can see a couple are actually switched off, which surprises me on the high preset. So this system has no problem playing Forza Horizon 4, and if you've got Forza Horizon 5, I'm sure this system will be fine with that as well. On to Red Dead Redemption now, and I'm in the graphics menu, and I've selected the balanced quality preset level. I've just nudged that texture quality down a touch to high from ultra, but we're not getting anywhere near the limit on the video memory, which can be seen in the top left. So it's at the moment with those settings, it's saying it's just over half the VRAM of that card is being used, which is more than enough. And there's a lot of other presets here. I can actually see a few are set to ultra, but I'll leave those in place. What I'll do is I'll run the game's benchmark tool and then report back on the results. So, not the most exciting of screens, but the benchmark process is finished, and we get an average of 38 frames per second. Now there's quite a difference between the minimum frame rate and the maximum, minimum being 28 and maximum 50. Ideally you want those as close as possible, so maybe adjust some of those graphical settings to get the average frame rate up and get the difference between minimum and maximum a bit more even. Right, so that's Red Dead Redemption benchmarking. So just to finish off then, this is a system based around the Intel i5-6500 processor. It's got 16 gig of ddr4 memory, running in the fastest speed that system will take, which is 2133, and the graphics card is a gtx1060, which is 6 gig. Now just as a side note, that graphics card is actually the most popular if you look at the Steam graphic card usage, so it's still worth checking out. And as you've seen, a lot of the free online games like Fortnite and Apex, you can just almost certainly max those out, or at the very least set them to high with the top resolution for that size monitor, and it will run even comfortably games such as Red Dead Redemption 2 and Cyberpunk without too much difficulty. Just ensure your system's got a solid state drive as well. Right, thanks for watching. If you want me to run any games on this system, just pop a comment. And just before I leave off, what I'll do is I'll switch the lights off so you can see those RGB fans in all their glory.